Have you ever found yourself in an unexpected situation, one that felt so random and insignificant in the moment, but later turned out to change the entire course of your life? Maybe it was a fleeting encounter with a stranger, a brief exchange of words, or even a small argument that you'd almost forgotten about by the time you got home. But what if I told you that one of these seemingly insignificant moments could lead you to something bigger than you could ever imagine? Now, hold on to that thought for a second. Picture this. You're stuck in the middle of a busy city, tired, late for something important, and you just need a taxi. But here's the catch. There's only one taxi available, and standing in front of you is a man, a stranger, who seems to have a claim on it. What do you do? Do you fight for the ride? Do you back down and find another way? Well, for one woman, a simple argument over that very taxi became the catalyst for something so much more than she could have ever anticipated. Hi there, and welcome to this unbelievable story. You might have clicked on this video thinking, what could possibly happen after a petty taxi fight? And let me tell you, you're about to be surprised. I'm going to take you on a journey where a small, almost insignificant moment turns into a life-altering opportunity, and you won't believe the outcome. Stick with me through this, because by the end of this video, you'll get the answer to the mystery you're wondering about right now. How did this woman go from arguing with a man over a taxi to becoming his business partner? Keep watching, and I promise you'll be hooked every step of the way. Now, let's get into it. Imagine the scene. A bustling, crowded city street, full of people running to and fro, cars honking, vendors calling out, the world in motion. Among all this, there's one woman, rushing to get somewhere, maybe work, maybe a meeting, who knows? But what's important is that she's running late. And like most of us, when you're running late, all you care about is getting there as quickly as possible. So, when she spots that lone taxi, sitting empty, just waiting for someone to hop in, it's like a lifeline. That's it. She's saved. The day can be salvaged. All she has to do is get into that cab and ride off into the city. But then, out of nowhere, another person steps in. A man. He's approaching the taxi with the same urgency, the same look of relief on his face. For a moment, both of them lock eyes. It's one of those unspoken moments when both people know what's happening but no one says anything. They both want the same thing. The taxi. And like any human being would, she steps forward and says, "Excuse me, I was here first." And just like that, things escalate. The man doesn't back down. In fact, he's got his own reasons for needing the cab, maybe even more pressing than hers. There's tension in the air, a small but heated argument that draws the attention of passers-by. The woman insists, the man stands his ground. It's a fight over something so trivial in the grand scheme of things, yet in this moment, it feels like everything. It's like watching a storm build up, thickening the air with conflict, yet neither of them backing down. Now, you might think this is where the story ends. Maybe they argue a little more, one of them gives up, and the taxi drives off with the winner. End of story. But that's not what happens here. What happens next is the part that will shock you, and it's going to make you rethink the way you look at life's random moments. Because, after this argument, something completely unexpected takes place. Instead of parting ways as strangers who've just fought over a taxi, this woman and this man actually connect. They don't just walk away. They don't just leave each other behind. No, something clicks between them. What began as a confrontation leads to a conversation, and that conversation leads to something neither of them could have ever predicted. But what could it possibly be? What made that argument, of all things, spark something much bigger than a mere taxi dispute? I bet you're dying to know what happened next. How does a random stranger who you argue with on a street corner end up being the person you go into business with? That's the mystery we're about to unravel. Now, before I reveal how this all unfolds, I need you to understand that this isn't just a story about a woman and a man. This is about something much more significant. It's about chance, destiny, and the ways in which the universe works in mysterious ways. Think about all the moments in your life where you could have made a different decision. What if you had chosen a different route home? What if you'd waited 5 more minutes to leave? Every little choice we make creates a ripple effect. One decision leads to another, and another, until you're standing at a crossroads, not knowing how you got here, but feeling like it was meant to be. So, I'm asking you to really think about this. What would you do if, in the middle of an argument, you saw a future that you couldn't possibly have imagined? What if, in the heat of the moment, you discovered something that would change everything? This woman, she didn't just walk away from the man. She saw something in him, and he saw something in her. This moment, this crazy little moment over a taxi ride, turned into a partnership that would take both of them on a journey neither could have predicted. But I'm not going to give it all away just yet. No, you're going to have to stay tuned, because the best part is just getting started. How did they go from arguing over a cab to running a business together? What were the pivotal moments that made them realize they were meant to be partners? And most importantly, what can you take away from this story? If you've ever wondered if a chance encounter could change your life, if you've ever believed that the universe works in mysterious ways, or if you're simply curious about how something as simple as a taxi ride can lead to something so much bigger, you're in the right place. Stick around, because by the time you finish this video, you'll not only have your answer but also be inspired to look at the small moments in your life differently. Who knows? Maybe your own story is waiting to unfold in ways you can't even imagine right now. So, don't go anywhere. I'm about to take you through every twist and turn of this incredible journey. And trust me, you won't want to miss a single second of it. What started with a taxi fight is about to become so much more. Are you ready to find out how? Keep watching, because we're just getting started. As we dig deeper into the life of the woman at the center of this story, you'll quickly realize that her day wasn't off to a typical start. Her name is MIA, and while she might have appeared like any other woman on the street that morning, rushing to her destination, she was far from ordinary. MIA had been through a lot lately. Her work life was a whirlwind of instability. Nothing seemed to go right. Her recent venture into the freelance world had started out with so much promise but quickly turned into a series of disappointing contracts, cancelled projects, and clients who never paid up. It was like the universe was throwing obstacles her way, and each one felt heavier than the last. She'd been struggling with a sense of dissatisfaction, questioning her choices and wondering if she'd ever find her true path. Despite her best efforts to keep it together, MIA couldn't shake the nagging feeling that she was stuck. And that feeling had only intensified over the last few weeks, as she watched her friends and former colleagues rise in their careers, while she remained stagnant, constantly battling the same setbacks. But that morning, as she stood on that street corner, the world felt different. She'd had a particularly hard week, things at work were falling apart, and the weight of her personal life felt like it was suffocating her. The argument with the man over the taxi was just the latest in a long string of frustrating, unproductive moments. What MIA didn't know was that this brief encounter would set in motion a chain of events that would turn her life upside down. The man she'd been arguing with was no stranger, although she had no way of knowing that just yet. In fact, the more you look into it, the more you'll start to see just how connected their paths had already been, even if neither of them realized it at the time. His name was Ethan, and while MIA had been caught up in her own whirlwind of problems, Ethan had been silently observing the chaos of his own life from the sidelines. He wasn't a random businessman in a suit or a regular office worker like the ones MIA had known in her previous corporate jobs. Ethan was a man of mystery, someone who didn't quite fit the mold of the ordinary person. His background wasn't what it appeared to be at first glance. On the surface, he looked like a successful entrepreneur, with an impressive portfolio of ventures. But beneath the surface, there was a different story, a story of someone who had clawed his way to the top, dealing with betrayal, deception, and failure along the way. His business had seen its own share of struggles, and in recent months, he'd been looking for something new, something that could bring him both success and a sense of purpose. When Ethan first locked eyes with MIA that day, he wasn't just looking for a ride. He was looking for an opportunity. You see, Ethan had been scouting the area for someone, a particular type of person who could help him turn his business around. And MIA, in all her frustration and confusion, fit the bill perfectly. But here's where things get interesting. Was the argument over the taxi a coincidence, or was it part of something bigger? Could Ethan have intentionally crossed paths with MIA at that exact moment, knowing that it would push them into a conversation that would eventually lead to a business partnership? It seemed like an absurd theory, but when you peel back the layers, you start to wonder if this was all part of a larger plan, one that MIA had no idea she was about to become a part of. As the argument progressed, neither of them backed down. But what kept it from escalating further into a confrontation was the strange way in which they started talking. At first, it was heated, each person defending their need for the cab, each of them in their own world, blind to the bigger picture. Yet, as the minutes passed, something shifted. MIA began to notice something different about Ethan. There was a calmness to his demeanor that caught her off guard. It wasn't the usual frustration that you'd expect from a person in this situation. He didn't seem angry, he seemed almost detached, like he was weighing his options in a quiet, methodical way. That strange sense of calm started to intrigue her, and before she knew it, she was listening more intently than she had planned. She wanted to understand who this man was, why he was so composed, and why she felt so drawn to him. But then, just as they were starting to talk past the argument and get to a point where a solution seemed possible, something unexpected happened. A third party entered the scene, an older man, dressed in a way that suggested he was connected to the business world. He was watching them from across the street, his eyes never leaving them. MIA didn't notice him at first, but Ethan did. And the way Ethan reacted to this stranger, it was subtle, but MIA couldn't miss it. His face changed ever so slightly, a flicker of recognition passing through his eyes, but just as quickly, he masked it. Was this man someone important in Ethan's life? Was he perhaps a business rival, or worse, a threat? MIA felt a sudden chill, sensing that this wasn't just about a taxi anymore. The pieces were slowly falling into place, but she had no idea what kind of game she was walking into. As the stranger approached, both MIA and Ethan reluctantly gave up their claim to the cab, allowing him to take it, and with it, any chance of peace for the moment. Yet, despite the apparent end to the argument, there was a lingering tension between MIA and Ethan. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They exchanged a few words before the man who had been watching them earlier stepped forward, interrupting their conversation. "Ethan," he said, his voice smooth, almost too smooth. "Is this the one?" The question hung in the air. MIA looked at Ethan, who quickly masked any emotion with a blank expression. She didn't know what was happening, but she could feel the weight of that question. Was it about her? Was he referring to her? Ethan didn't answer right away, but there was something in his silence that made Mia's heart race. This wasn't just a chance encounter. There was something going on behind the scenes, something she wasn't yet privy to. And just like that, the tension escalated. MIA could no longer shake the feeling that the man she had just argued with was hiding something big. But what? Was he truly the businessman he claimed to be, or was there another side to him? Was the older man an ally, or was he someone who posed a threat to Ethan? And what about MIA? Why had she been brought into this in the first place? Was she simply a pawn in a much larger game, or was there more to her role than she realized? The deeper you go into this story, the more questions arise. And as Mia's day turns into a whirlwind of unexpected turns, you'll start to see just how much is at stake for both of them. What started as a simple argument over a taxi is quickly unraveling into something far more complex, and the truth, well, that's something neither of them are prepared for. Stick with me, because what comes next will blow your mind. Hesima walked away from the street corner that day, still trying to process everything that had just happened. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The exchange with Ethan had been strange, but the mysterious appearance of the older man had thrown her off completely. Who was he? And why did Ethan seem so rattled by his presence? Despite the awkward tension in the air, MIA pushed the thoughts aside, telling herself she was overthinking it. She was just tired and frustrated from a week full of disappointments. But the nagging feeling wouldn't leave her. Her curiosity was piqued, and she found herself replaying the entire encounter over and over in her mind. There was something more to Ethan than met the eye, and she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about a taxi anymore. MIA decided to go about her day, but that sense of unease lingered like a shadow, quietly trailing her wherever she went. Later that afternoon, as she was working in her tiny apartment, trying to focus on a freelance project she had barely started, her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, but for some reason, she answered. The voice on the other end was low, cautious, almost urgent. "MIA, you need to stop asking questions about Ethan. This is your warning." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. The warning sent a chill down her spine. Who was this person, and how did they know her name? She tried to press for more information, but the voice quickly hung up, leaving only a ringing silence in her ears. Her pulse raced as her mind began to race, coming up with 1,000 theories. Could Ethan have anything to do with this? Did he know someone who was watching her? Or was this just some random prank? She wanted to dismiss it, to ignore the unsettling feeling building inside her, but she couldn't. It wasn't just the voice that bothered her. It was the tone. There was something about it that suggested there were people out there who didn't want her digging deeper into Ethan's life. It wasn't long before MIA started noticing more strange things. Small details began to stand out in her everyday routine. One morning, as she sat at her usual cafe, typing away on her laptop, she noticed someone sitting at the table across from hers. A man, wearing a dark jacket, sunglasses, and a cap pulled low. He wasn't doing anything overtly suspicious, but there was something in his posture that seemed too stiff, too aware. He wasn't looking at her directly, but every time she glanced up, his eyes were subtly tracking her movements. MIA tried to shake it off as paranoia, but the feeling gnawed at her. What was this man's connection to her? Why did she feel like she was being watched? That night, MIA decided to confront Ethan. She needed answers, and she wasn't going to back down. She called him, nervously tapping her fingers on the desk as the phone rang. When he answered, his voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. Something in his tone told her that he knew exactly what she was about to ask. "I know you've been looking into me," Ethan said, his voice surprisingly steady. "And I need you to stop. You don't know what you're dealing with." Mia's heart skipped a beat. "What's going on, Ethan? What is all of this? Why was that man watching me earlier? Who are you really?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. She could almost hear him weighing his options, deciding how much to reveal. Finally, he spoke again, but his words were cryptic and evasive. "MIA, trust me, you don't want to get tangled up in this. Some things are better left alone. You think you want answers, but you're not ready for the truth. Just drop it." But it wasn't just the mystery of Ethan that bothered her anymore. MIA had started to connect the dots. A few days after that phone call, she decided to do some digging of her own. She began looking into the company that Ethan supposedly ran. On paper, it seemed legit. There were articles, interviews, success stories. But as MIA dug deeper, she began to uncover small inconsistencies. Dates didn't add up, names seemed familiar, but some connections were missing. She found reports of a failed business venture that had been quietly swept under the rug, rumors of shady deals and backroom negotiations, but it was like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. And then, something strange happened. As MIA dug further into the archives of a business news site, she found an article she hadn't expected, one that mentioned Ethan by name, but not in the way she thought. It was a brief mention, almost like a footnote, buried deep in the back pages of an old article about a failed startup. It talked about a scandal, one that Ethan had been involved in years ago. The details were vague, but the mention of a disappearance stuck out. Someone had disappeared under suspicious circumstances, and there was talk of foul play. Mia's breath caught in her throat as she realized what this could mean. She'd found something. But just as she was about to save the article, her computer screen flickered, and then the entire document vanished. Her heart raced. She refreshed the page, but it was gone, vanished into thin air. The connection had been cut, like someone had intentionally erased it from the internet. MIA couldn't believe what had just happened. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone was trying to stop her from uncovering the truth. In a panic, MIA called Ethan again, but this time, he didn't pick up. She left message after message, but there was no response. That's when things took a darker turn. Late that night, MIA received another mysterious call. The voice on the other end was distorted, but the words were clear: "Stop digging. Or else." The warning was unmistakable. Someone wanted her to drop her investigation into Ethan's past. But why? And who exactly was behind this? Was Ethan truly involved in something shady, or was he just a pawn in a much bigger game? MIA was now more determined than ever to uncover the truth, but with every step forward, it felt like the walls were closing in. Someone was pulling strings behind the scenes, trying to cover up something dark and dangerous. And the deeper MIA dug, the more tangled she became in a web of lies, betrayal, and hidden agendas. The clock was ticking, and MIA knew she was running out of time. Every new clue she uncovered seemed to lead to more questions, and every answer felt like it raised the stakes even higher. With the threat of unknown forces closing in on her, MIA had to decide whether she would continue her search for the truth or walk away before it was too late. But one thing was clear: this wasn't just about a business partnership anymore. It was about something much bigger and far more dangerous than she ever could have imagined. What happens next? Who is pulling the strings behind the scenes, and what is Ethan hiding? Stay tuned, because the twists keep coming, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Just as MIA was trying to process the mysterious phone call and the sudden disappearance of the article she had uncovered, another wave of unease swept over her. It started with a text message, simple, cryptic, and chilling. It was from her closest friend, Rachel, who had been supportive of MIA through all the ups and downs of her life. Rachel had been there when MIA first decided to step out on her own, to leave behind the corporate grind and follow her passion. She knew Mia's dreams, her fears, and her doubts better than anyone. So when the message came through, Mia's heart skipped a beat. The text read, "MIA, I've been getting strange messages, too. They told me to stay away from you. I don't know what's going on, but I think we're in danger." The words hit MIA like a ton of bricks. Her thoughts immediately went back to the warning phone calls she'd been getting, the strange man watching her at the cafe, and the strange disappearance of evidence just when she thought she was getting close to the truth. What did Rachel mean by strange messages? Who was trying to warn them, and why were they now turning their attention to Rachel as well? Rachel wasn't involved in the investigation, she had only listened to MIA vent about her suspicions, but now it seemed like someone was making it clear that Mia's curiosity was putting her friends in harm's way. The fact that Rachel, someone entirely removed from this whole mess, was receiving threats made MIA realize just how far-reaching whatever this was might be. It wasn't just about MIA anymore, it was about everyone she cared about. With a sense of urgency, MIA called Rachel, desperate for more details, but the phone rang out, and then went straight to voicemail. Anxiety clawed at Mia's chest as she dialed again, and again, but there was no answer. Each unanswered call added to the unease that had been building in Mia's gut for days. She couldn't sit idle. She had to find Rachel, to make sure she was safe and get to the bottom of these strange threats. But something in the back of her mind kept telling her that this wasn't just a coincidence. Rachel's involvement was no accident. It was as if someone was tightening the screws around Mia's world, one person at a time, and now, her closest ally had been dragged into the chaos. When MIA finally got through to Rachel later that evening, Rachel's voice was shaky, but she assured MIA that she was okay. Still, something wasn't right. There was a lingering fear in Rachel's tone that MIA had never heard before. "MIA, Rachel said in a whisper, I don't know who's doing this, but someone's been following me. I saw them again today, at my work, just standing across the street, watching me. I know it sounds crazy, but I can feel it. It's like someone knows we're getting too close to something." The hairs on the back of Mia's neck stood up. It was becoming clear that Rachel was in as deep as she was now, whether she liked it or not. But why? Why was Rachel being targeted, and who was behind it all? As MIA tried to process this, a new wave of unease settled over her. She needed to figure out what had really been going on with Ethan, but the stakes were getting higher, the danger felt more real, and the people around her were being drawn into a web of lies and threats. She hadn't thought it could get worse, but now she wasn't so sure. Was Ethan involved in this? Was he the one orchestrating all of this to keep them both from discovering the truth? Or was he just as much a victim as MIA and Rachel, caught up in something bigger than anyone could have imagined? The pieces she had been gathering were starting to feel like they didn't fit together, and each new discovery seemed to contradict the one before. One thing MIA had learned over the past few days was that no one, not even Ethan, could be trusted entirely. He had lied, or at least avoided telling her the full truth, and now, with Rachel involved, MIA had no idea who was on her side and who was playing a deeper game. And then there was the troubling thought that lingered in the back of her mind: what if she was being manipulated all along? What if this whole situation, the taxi argument, the mysterious man, the warnings, even Rachel's involvement, had been part of someone's plan to steer her in a certain direction, to push her towards something she wasn't supposed to find? The next day, MIA received a strange package in the mail. There was no return address, just her name scrawled on the front. When she opened it, inside was an old, faded photograph. It showed a younger Ethan, standing next to a man MIA didn't recognize, with what looked like a giant office building behind them. The image was grainy, but it looked like it had been taken in the 1990s, well before Ethan had made a name for himself in the business world. But it wasn't just the photo that sent a chill down her spine. Scrawled on the back of the picture, in red ink, were the words, "Do you really want to know the truth?" Mia's mind raced. Why was she being sent this photograph? What connection did it have to the mystery that was unfolding? The person who had sent it clearly knew that MIA was investigating Ethan, but why would they give her more clues? Was this some kind of twisted game, or was it an invitation to dig deeper, a challenge to uncover something darker and more dangerous than she had already imagined? It felt like a trap, but MIA knew she couldn't stop now. She couldn't walk away, not when there were so many questions, so many unanswered pieces that threatened to tear everything apart. She immediately called Rachel, telling her about the photo, and Rachel's response was not what MIA expected. "I've seen that picture before," Rachel said quietly. "It was in a file I found while I was helping you with some research a few days ago. I didn't think much of it, but now, it's all starting to make sense." Rachel paused for a moment before adding, "MIA, Ethan isn't who you think he is." The words hung in the air between them like a heavy fog. Mia's heart began to race. What was Rachel talking about? What did she know that MIA didn't? Could this really be the key to everything, the secret that had been buried for years? Or was this just another piece of the puzzle, one that would send her spinning in yet another direction? As MIA hung up, she knew one thing for sure: this was far from over. In fact, it felt like the walls were closing in on her. Ethan, Rachel, the mysterious man, the threats, none of it was making sense anymore. Each new discovery only made the mystery more complicated, more dangerous. And the more she uncovered, the more she realized that someone, somewhere, was willing to do anything to keep the truth hidden. Who was behind this? What was Ethan hiding? And what was Rachel really involved in? MIA was getting closer to the truth, but with every step, the danger was growing. The more she dug, the more she realized that trusting anyone could be a mistake. As the pieces of this puzzle came together, it became increasingly clear. The real question wasn't just what Ethan was hiding, it was who he was really working for. Stay tuned, because the twist you're about to witness is nothing short of explosive. What MIA uncovers next will change everything. The next few days felt like a blur of chaos and confusion. MIA couldn't remember a time when she'd felt so trapped, so consumed by fear. She tried to keep up with her usual routine, but every step felt like it was leading her deeper into something she didn't understand, something dark and dangerous that she was struggling to escape. Every time she left her apartment, she felt eyes on her, and every car that drove past her on the street seemed to slow down just a little too much. The feeling of being followed had become so real, so persistent, that it was impossible to ignore. Her heart would race when she glanced over her shoulder, but no matter how many times she looked, there was nothing there, at least, not that she could see. But she felt it. Someone was watching her. Someone was waiting for her to make a mistake. It wasn't just the constant paranoia that was eating at her. It was the silence. The absence of any further communication from Ethan. After their last conversation, he had disappeared completely. No calls, no texts, no signs of life. He'd vanished, and MIA couldn't help but wonder if he'd known something was coming, something that forced him to disappear, or worse, to distance himself from her for good. Had she been used from the start? Was she just another pawn in someone's game, left to deal with the fallout while the real players slipped into the shadows? The unanswered questions only deepened the gnawing sense of dread that had taken root inside her. But it wasn't just Ethan's silence that disturbed her. It was Rachel's. She hadn't heard from her best friend since their last conversation, and every attempt to reach her had been met with silence. MIA had called multiple times, texted, even sent messages on social media, but there was no response. At first, MIA tried to tell herself that Rachel was just busy, maybe overwhelmed with everything that had been happening. But the longer it went on, the more impossible that explanation seemed. Rachel had never ignored her like this, not even when they'd had their worst fights. Something was wrong, and MIA could feel it in the pit of her stomach. And then, one evening, as MIA sat in her apartment, desperately trying to piece together the remaining fragments of the mystery, she received an email. It was from Rachel, at least, it looked like it was. But when MIA opened it, her stomach dropped. The email wasn't a message of reassurance, nor was it the apology MIA had expected after the tense phone call. Instead, it was a brief, cold message with only one line: "Stay away from Ethan. It's too late now." The words felt like a death sentence, a warning MIA wasn't sure how to interpret. Why had Rachel sent this? Why now? And, more importantly, why did it feel like Rachel was begging her to back off, to let it go? Mia's hands trembled as she tried to process the message. Could Rachel have been involved in this from the beginning? Could she have known more about Ethan's past than she had let on? Or had Rachel herself been pulled into a situation far beyond her control, a victim of the same dark forces that had entangled MIA? She didn't know, but one thing was clear: Rachel was in danger, and MIA was too. Whoever was behind this had a grip on them both, and there was no telling how far they would go to keep the truth buried. With a newfound urgency, MIA decided to visit Rachel's apartment, hoping to get answers, hoping to find her friend and understand what was really going on. But when she arrived, the door was slightly ajar, a chilling sign that something was very wrong. MIA pushed the door open slowly, her breath catching in her throat. The apartment was eerily quiet, too quiet, and there was an unsettling stillness in the air. Rachel's things were scattered around, her laptop open on the kitchen counter, an empty coffee mug sitting on the table. But Rachel was nowhere to be found. The more MIA looked around, the more she realized that something wasn't right. It wasn't just the absence of Rachel. It was the feeling that someone had been here recently, and not in a casual, innocent way. There was a sense of intrusion, of someone searching, rifling through personal things, as if looking for something. Mia's pulse quickened as she stepped further into the apartment, her mind racing. Had Rachel been taken? Had she been forced into hiding? Or had she simply run away, abandoning MIA in the middle of everything? She didn't want to believe that. She couldn't. But the evidence pointed to something darker, something more sinister. As she moved toward the bedroom, something caught her eye: a small, folded piece of paper tucked under the edge of the bed. Her hands were shaking as she reached for it, and when she unfolded it, a cold wave of dread washed over her. The note was simple, just a few hastily written words: "They know everything. Don't trust anyone." The message didn't just imply that Rachel had been hiding something, it suggested that she, too, was caught in a trap she couldn't escape. The warning was clear: MIA was no longer safe. With the weight of the note heavy in her hands, MIA stumbled back into the living room, trying to make sense of it all. But then, the sound of footsteps from the hallway froze her in place. Someone was outside. Mia's heart slammed against her chest as she quickly moved toward the door, her thoughts racing. Who was it? Was it Rachel, coming back? Or was it someone else? Someone who had been waiting for her, watching her every move. The door creaked open, and Mia's breath caught in her throat when she saw a figure standing in the doorway. It wasn't Rachel. It was a man, tall, with a cold, expressionless face. He didn't say anything at first, he didn't need to. The look in his eyes was enough to send a chill down Mia's spine. "I told you to stop," the man said, his voice flat and menacing. "But you didn't listen. Now you've crossed a line." Mia's mind raced. Who was this man? And why was he threatening her? Was he connected to Ethan? Was he the one who had been watching her? Or was he someone entirely different, someone working to keep her from finding the truth? With her pulse pounding in her ears, MIA backed away slowly, her mind scrambling for a way out, a way to escape whatever was about to happen next. The man didn't move, his eyes fixed on her with an unnerving intensity. She could feel the weight of his gaze pressing down on her, as if he could read her every thought. The silence between them felt suffocating, like a storm about to break. MIA knew that whatever was happening, whatever web she had gotten tangled in, It was far from over, and it was more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. Before Mia could react, the man spoke again, his voice low and threatening. "You should have stayed away, Mia. Now you're going to wish you had." As his words hung in the air, a cold sweat broke out on her skin. Was this the end? Or was this just the beginning of something far worse? Mia turned to flee, but the man stepped forward, blocking her path. There was no escaping. Not this time. The door slammed shut behind her, and Mia realized she was trapped. What was happening? Who were these people? And most importantly, why was she at the center of this terrifying mystery? Stay with me, because the truth is closer than ever, and it's more dangerous than anything Mia could have ever imagined. Mia's heart was pounding in her chest as the man blocked her path, his presence suffocating. The sense of panic was overwhelming, but in the back of her mind, one question kept gnawing at her: why was he so sure of himself? It was as if he knew everything about her, every step she'd taken, every move she'd made. She froze for a split second, trying to piece together what had just happened. Her pulse was racing, her mind screaming for answers, and yet, everything felt like a blur. As the man slowly advanced toward her, a flash of recognition sparked in Mia's mind. It was fleeting, just a glimpse of something she couldn't quite grasp, but she was certain of one thing: this wasn't just some random thug. This man was connected to her in ways she wasn't prepared to understand. Then, the man did something unexpected. He stepped aside, just for a moment, as if letting her think she had a chance to escape. Mia hesitated, her breath shaky, and she took a cautious step toward the door, her fingers reaching for the handle. But before she could make a move, the man spoke again, his voice cold but oddly calm. "You're asking the wrong questions, Mia," he said. "You've been following the wrong trail this whole time." The words hit her like a punch to the stomach. What did he mean? Was this all a game to him? Or was he trying to confuse her further? Mia stopped in her tracks, her body frozen in place as she turned to face him again. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, still reeling from the shock of his words. The man smiled, small, but enough to unsettle her. "I think you already know." Her mind raced. She had never seen him before, not in this way, at least, but there was something familiar about him. Something she couldn't quite put her finger on. And that's when it hit her. The picture, the one that had been sent to her in the mail. The man in the photograph with Ethan, he was the one standing next to Ethan, the one she hadn't recognized. The man in front of her now wasn't just some random figure, he was part of the story. But how? Why? "I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm not afraid of you," Mia said, her voice shaking, but there was a quiet strength behind it. She wasn't about to back down, not now. The man chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "You don't even understand what you're dealing with, do you? You've been following a trail that was meant for you to find, but not in the way you think. The truth isn't what you think it is." Mia's mind raced again. Everything that had happened, the taxi argument, the mysterious man following her, the missing evidence, the warnings from Rachel, none of it was adding up. And now this. What did he mean by "the truth isn't what you think it is"? Could it be possible that everything Mia had discovered so far was just a carefully orchestrated illusion? Had she been manipulated all along, led down this rabbit hole by someone who knew exactly how to keep her moving forward? The man stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I should have known you'd figure it out eventually. But you're too close to the truth now. And so is Rachel." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Did you really think she disappeared because she was afraid?" "No. Rachel's been playing her own part in this, Mia. She's been working for us the entire time." The shock of his words sent a shiver down Mia's spine. "What? No. That's impossible." But the man just shook his head. "You don't want to believe it, but it's the truth. Rachel's loyalty lies elsewhere. She's not just your friend. She's been a part of this from the very beginning. The messages, the warnings, you were never supposed to find out about Ethan or anything else. She's been keeping you in the dark while feeding information to the people who want this all to remain hidden." Mia felt like the ground beneath her was crumbling, her world falling apart with every word he said. Rachel? Her closest friend, the one who had always been there for her? How could this be true? It didn't make sense. But then Mia remembered the text she'd received from Rachel, the one that had haunted her: "Stay away from Ethan. It's too late now." What if Rachel wasn't just trying to protect her? What if she had been trying to keep Mia from uncovering the truth? The man's next words shattered everything Mia thought she knew. "You've been digging into something much bigger than you realize. Ethan isn't who you think he is." But Rachel knows the full story. She's known from the start. It was always about control, Mia. Always about power. You've been too caught up in the details to see the bigger picture. Mia felt a cold chill run through her veins as she tried to process this revelation. She wanted to scream, to run, but she was frozen in place. Rachel, working against her all this time? It felt like a betrayal on a scale Mia couldn't comprehend. She had trusted Rachel more than anyone. But now, she had no idea who she could trust. The man took another step toward her, his face inches from hers. "It's over now. You've made it impossible to walk away. But you can still be part of the plan. We need you, Mia. We always have." "Part of the plan?" Mia stammered. "What plan? What are you talking about?" The man's lips curled into a smirk. "The plan to take control. The plan to reset everything. And you, Mia, you're a critical part of it. All your questions, all your investigations, they were never just about Ethan. They were about you. Your role. What you can bring to the table." Mia's thoughts were spinning now, everything she thought she knew crumbling away. Her heart was pounding in her chest, her mind racing with 100 questions, none of which made sense. She had thought she was fighting to uncover the truth, to save Rachel, to understand what had really happened. But what if the truth wasn't what she thought it was? What if everything, every move she had made, every clue she had uncovered, had been part of some grand design she hadn't been able to see? "I won't be a part of whatever this is," Mia spat, her voice trembling with defiance. The man simply shrugged, as if her resistance was irrelevant. "You don't have a choice." And that was when the weight of his words fully hit her. This wasn't just about Ethan. This wasn't just about Rachel. This was about something far bigger, something she was caught in, whether she liked it or not. And as the man turned and walked out of the apartment, leaving Mia standing there, she realized with a sickening certainty that she had been manipulated from the very beginning. But who was behind it all? And what was the plan that Mia had become a part of, whether she wanted to or not? Mia was about to find out. But by then, it might be too late. Mia's mind was a whirlwind, a cyclone of confusion and terror that she couldn't escape. The revelation that Rachel, her best friend, had been involved in this twisted game from the beginning, had left her reeling. The truth was no longer a distant thing she could chase with determination and hope. It had become something dangerous, something that threatened to unravel everything she thought she knew about herself, about her life, about the people she trusted. But it didn't stop there. The man's words echoed in her head: "You're a critical part of it. Always have been." She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being pulled into something far darker, far deeper, than anything she could have imagined. The pieces didn't fit, but the more she struggled to make sense of them, the more she realized how much she had been manipulated. And yet, something inside her wouldn't let go. She needed to know. She had to know what was happening. In the days that followed, the tension in her life became unbearable. Every phone call, every text, every knock on the door felt like it was leading her further into a trap. And then there was Rachel. Mia had tried calling her, texted her, even gone to her apartment, but nothing. No answers. No sign of life. It was as if Rachel had evaporated into thin air. Mia had never felt so alone. But deep down, she knew she couldn't give up on her. Not yet. Even with everything pointing to Rachel's betrayal, something inside her refused to believe it. The woman she had trusted most in this world couldn't just be playing her like this, could she? And yet, every shred of evidence seemed to suggest that Rachel was more than just an innocent bystander. She was involved, deeply so. The messages. The warnings. The silence. Mia couldn't escape the gut-wrenching feeling that Rachel had sold her out. And then came the phone call that forced Mia's hand. It was an unknown number, and for a moment, she thought about letting it go. But something about it gnawed at her. She picked up, her voice tight with the fear of not knowing what to expect. MIA. It was a voice she knew well, but one she hadn't heard in days. Rachel. Rachel? Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you. What's going on? What the hell is happening? Mia's words came out in a rush, desperate, frantic. She had so many questions, and each one felt like a knife turning in her chest. Listen to me, Rachel's voice was low, strained. You're in danger. I never wanted you to get involved. But it's too late now. You can't back out. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Mia's heart pounded in her ears. What do you mean it's too late? You've been lying to me this whole time, Rachel. You've been part of all this. You've been working with them, haven't you? There was a long silence on the other end. When Rachel spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper, as if she was afraid someone would hear her. I didn't have a choice. None of us did. It's bigger than you think, MIA. Bigger than all of us. The words stung, but they didn't surprise MIA. She'd suspected as much. But hearing Rachel say it aloud was like a slap to the face. You sold me out, MIA shot back, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and betrayal. Why? Why would you do that? Rachel let out a shaky breath. I didn't want to, but I had to. There was another pause, too long this time. They're threatening my family, MIA. I don't have a choice. Mia's blood ran cold. The idea of someone threatening Rachel's family was enough to stop her in her tracks. But it didn't answer all her questions. And Ethan? What about him? What's really going on with him? She demanded. Rachel hesitated. Ethan's not the person you think he is, MIA. He's not your hero in this story. He's not even a victim. He's part of this too. All of it. The bombshell dropped like a weight on Mia's chest, and she could barely breathe. Ethan? Part of it too? Her mind was screaming for answers, but the more Rachel spoke, the more fragmented everything became. What does that mean? What have you all been hiding? She asked, her voice cracking with emotion. Rachel's next words were the hardest to hear. If you don't stop now, if you keep digging, they won't just come for you. They'll come for everyone you care about. Mia's thoughts were spinning. She could hear the fear in Rachel's voice, but she could also hear the resignation, the hopelessness. Was Rachel being forced into this? Was she being blackmailed the way MIA was? Or was she just as complicit as everyone else? I don't know what to believe anymore, MIA said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I can't just walk away. I need to know the truth. I have to. I won't let them win. Rachel's voice broke, desperate now. MIA, please. You don't understand. You think you're doing the right thing, but you're making it worse. You're making them notice you. The truth isn't something you can just chase down. You can't win this. Please. For your own safety, stop. Just walk away while you still can. The line went silent again, and MIA was left alone with the weight of Rachel's words. This wasn't just about uncovering the truth anymore. This was about survival. The stakes had escalated beyond anything she could have imagined. She wasn't just caught in a game, she was a piece of it. And so was Rachel. And so was Ethan. But the question now wasn't just what had happened. It was who MIA could trust, and how far she was willing to go to get to the bottom of this. Was she willing to put her own life on the line to expose everything? Was she prepared to sacrifice the people she loved in order to uncover the truth? The next morning, MIA received an envelope. Inside, there was no return address, just a single, neatly folded piece of paper. Her hands were shaking as she unfolded it. The message was simple, but chilling. You have one choice left: leave town now, or the people you care about will pay the price. This is your last warning. MIA stared at the words, the weight of the ultimatum pressing down on her like a vice. The silence that followed was suffocating. She didn't have much time to think, and the path before her seemed impossible. She could walk away, go into hiding, and hope that this nightmare would somehow disappear. But deep inside, MIA knew that wouldn't be enough. Not anymore. If she ran, the truth would remain buried, and she couldn't live with that. But if she stayed, if she kept pushing forward, there was no telling what would happen next. The decision lay heavy on her shoulders. Stay, fight, and risk everything, or leave, and let the truth remain in the dark. For MIA, there was no easy choice. And as the days grew darker, the line between friend and enemy blurred beyond recognition, until it was impossible to know who could be trusted and who was simply playing a part in the game. She knew one thing for sure: whatever decision she made, the stakes would be higher than ever before. And the consequences? They would follow her for the rest of her life. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning to spiral into something far worse. And MIA was trapped in the center of it all, with no way out but through. MIA felt like she was spiraling, losing grip on the thread of reality she had been clinging to for weeks. The envelope in her hand was a physical manifestation of the hell she had found herself in, a warning, a final plea to walk away before things got worse. But the truth was, MIA couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when everything was so tangled, so entwined, and so wrong. She couldn't leave this behind. She couldn't pretend the mess wasn't bigger than her. Because it was. It was far bigger than anything she had imagined. The moment she stepped outside her apartment, everything shifted. She was being watched. She could feel it. Every footstep, every car that drove by, every stranger who glanced in her direction made her pulse spike with anxiety. Her mind was racing with the realization that this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about everyone she had ever cared about, and more. It was about a network, a conspiracy so vast, so insidious, that it stretched far beyond the people she had trusted. She had thought Rachel was the key to it all, but Rachel's betrayal, Rachel's warning, had opened a door to something darker than she could have imagined. And MIA wasn't sure she was prepared for what lay on the other side. The city, once familiar, now felt like a maze she was stuck in, every alley hiding secrets she wasn't ready to confront. As she walked through the streets, the weight of her decision pressed down on her. Stay, and risk it all. Or run, and let the truth stay buried forever. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a jolt of electricity running through her body. She didn't even have to look at the screen to know who it was. Rachel. Don't do this, MIA, Rachel's voice came through, frantic and panicked. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. You have to stop. They're everywhere. Mia's heart skipped a beat. I can't stop, Rachel. Not now. Not when you've already dragged me into this mess. I need answers. You think you're the only one? Rachel shot back, her voice strained with emotion. You think this is just about you? You think you're the only one being hunted? MIA, this isn't just about one person. This is about power. Control. And it's bigger than anything you can imagine. The words cut through MIA like a blade. She had always believed that this was about the truth about Ethan, about the taxi incident, about the betrayal she felt from Rachel. But Rachel was right. It was never just about her. It was never just about one person, one story. MIA was a pawn in a much larger game, and she was only beginning to see how many pieces were involved. Suddenly, Mia's mind clicked, a horrifying realization dawning on her. The conspiracy wasn't just about the people she knew, it was about the system. It was about the companies, the powerful individuals who had quietly manipulated everything from the shadows, pulling strings behind the scenes, controlling outcomes, and erasing people who became liabilities. Ethan. Rachel. The man in the photograph. The mysterious warnings. It was all connected to something far greater than she could have ever guessed. Before MIA could say anything more, there was a sharp sound behind her, a car screeching to a halt, and then a voice, smooth and calm, but laced with something far darker. I wouldn't keep running if I were you. MIA froze, her blood running cold as she turned around. Standing there, just a few feet away, was someone she knew all too well. Ethan. He was supposed to be the missing piece of the puzzle, the victim in this twisted game. But now, looking at him, MIA felt her stomach drop. What are you doing here? Mia's voice wavered with confusion and dread. Ethan stepped forward, his eyes cold and unfeeling. I thought we could finally talk, MIA. I've been trying to get through to you. But you were too busy looking for the answers that I didn't want you to find. Mia's heart was hammering in her chest as she stared at him. The man she had once thought was innocent, the man who had been at the center of her investigation, was standing in front of her, not as a victim, but as a participant. The truth was starting to warp and twist, the pieces fitting together in ways that felt too dangerous to comprehend. Mia's throat was dry, the words barely coming out. You're part of this, aren't you? Ethan's expression didn't change. He didn't flinch, didn't even seem to care that Mia was reeling. Of course I am, he said matter-of-factly, as if the revelation should have been obvious. You think you've been the only one searching for the truth. Mia, you have no idea how deep this goes. This isn't some petty conspiracy. This is about the future. About control. About reshaping the world in ways you can't even begin to understand. Mia took a step back, a mix of anger and betrayal flooding her chest. You were working with them this whole time, weren't you? You played me, Ethan. You used me. You made me think I was helping you. Ethan's lips curled into a twisted smile. You weren't helping me. You were helping them. You were helping all of us. Don't you see, Mia? You've been a part of this from the start. You've always been part of the plan. The weight of his words hit her like a freight train. Her mind was reeling, the truth slipping through her fingers as she tried to process the betrayal. This was bigger than her. It wasn't just about her. Ethan had never been the innocent man she thought he was. He had never been trapped. He had been playing his role in this elaborate web of deceit the entire time. And worse still, Mia was in it too. Her every step, her every move, had been orchestrated from the beginning. She wasn't a player in the game, she was the game. You've been following the trail because it's the one we wanted you to follow, Ethan continued, his voice colder now, more detached. All of it, the messages, the warnings, the clues. You weren't searching for answers, Mia. You were being led. Her pulse quickened, the realization sinking in with horrifying clarity. She wasn't just caught in this conspiracy, she was the key to it. But what was the end game? Why was she so crucial to their plan? Before she could ask another question, Ethan's tone shifted again, turning sharp, almost threatening. You've come this far, Mia. You've done everything we needed you to do. Now, there's only one choice left for you. Mia's stomach churned as she stepped back, her mind racing. What do you mean, one choice left? Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he just stepped aside and gestured to the car behind him. Inside the vehicle, Mia could see two figures sitting in the back, people she didn't recognize. But the expression on their faces told her everything she needed to know. There was no going back now. This is your final decision, Mia, Ethan said, his eyes locking with hers, cold and calculating. Get in the car, and you can be part of this. You can join us. You can be a part of the future we're building. Walk away, and we'll leave you alone. But make no mistake, you won't be able to outrun us. Mia stood frozen, the weight of her choices pressing down on her. What had started as a simple quest for truth had now turned into a high-stakes game, one where her every move would have consequences. She could feel the danger closing in, the pressure mounting on her chest, and she realized just how deeply she had been drawn into something far bigger than herself. The future, her future, was no longer in her hands. It was in theirs. Mia's world had been a blur of half-truths, twisted alliances, and mounting paranoia. But standing here now, with the weight of every decision pressing down on her, she knew there was no more running. There was no more hiding from what had been set in motion. The game, the conspiracy, the lies, it was all coming to a head. She could feel it in her bones. She had come this far, and now, she was ready to face the truth, no matter how devastating it would be. The car that had been waiting for her pulled away, the two shadowy figures inside never taking their eyes off her as she walked toward the building. The door swung open in front of her, and she stepped inside, her pulse hammering in her chest. She had no idea what to expect, but she knew this was the moment. She had no more pieces of the puzzle to fit together, she had to confront the mastermind behind all of this. The room was dimly lit, the air heavy with tension. As she walked deeper into the space, Mia felt every nerve on edge, every instinct telling her to turn back. But she couldn't. Not now. Not after everything she had learned. She had to know. She had to finally understand who had been pulling the strings, and why. There, standing in the middle of the room, was the last person MIA ever expected to see. The man she had thought was a distant player, a shadow in the background of this whole mess. But now, seeing him here, it all clicked. It all made sense. Victor, the man who had been behind the veil the entire time, the one who had manipulated everyone, who had been the architect of this conspiracy, was standing in front of her, his expression cold and unreadable. "MIA," Victor said, his voice smooth, almost too calm. "I knew you'd come. I had a feeling you'd get this far. But I didn't expect it to be you. You've been a far more useful piece of this puzzle than I could have ever imagined." Mia's mind was racing as she stepped closer to him, her eyes fixed on his face, searching for any sign of weakness, any crack in the facade that might reveal the truth she was desperately seeking. "You," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of fury and disbelief. "You've been behind all of this. You've been controlling everything from the start. From Rachel's betrayal to Ethan's lies. You've been using me, haven't you?" Victor's lips curled into a cold smile, and he took a step forward, his gaze never leaving hers. "You've been part of it all along, MIA. You just didn't know it. You were always a means to an end. A tool in a much larger game." He paused, watching her face as if savoring the realization that was sinking in. "Everything you thought was happening was precisely what I wanted to happen. Your every move, every decision, it was all anticipated. You were never in control." The words hit MIA like a punch to the gut. She had fought so hard for the truth, fought so hard to make sense of everything, and yet, here she was, facing the one person who had been orchestrating it all. The lies, the threats, the twisted games, it had all been part of his design. Victor had been using her the entire time. "No," MIA whispered, shaking her head. "You're lying. You don't get to control me anymore. I'm not a pawn in your game. I won't let you have the satisfaction of watching me break down." Victor's smile widened, and he took another step toward her, his voice low and menacing now. "You never had a choice, MIA. You never did. You were always going to walk into this room. You were always going to uncover the truth, just as I planned. You just didn't realize how deeply you were involved until it was too late." Mia's heart was racing, every inch of her body screaming for her to run, to escape. But she couldn't. There was nowhere to go. Every door, every exit, was closed off. She had nowhere to hide. She was trapped, with no way out but through him. In a split second, Mia's mind raced through the final pieces of the puzzle. Something didn't sit right, something she had missed. She had been played, yes, but there was one thing Victor hadn't accounted for. The evidence. The truth. It wasn't all in his hands. "Your mistake," MIA said, her voice steady, despite the panic she felt, "is thinking you've controlled every piece of this. You think you've been the one pulling the strings, but you've made a crucial mistake. You underestimated me. You underestimated my ability to find the truth." Victor's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, there was a flicker of something in his gaze. It was fear, brief, almost imperceptible, but MIA saw it. She had found it. "You thought you had hidden everything," MIA continued, "but you didn't. I found it, Victor. I found the one thing you never expected. The one piece of evidence you missed." She pulled a small USB drive from her pocket, holding it up in front of him. Victor's expression faltered for a fraction of a second, but it was enough for MIA to know she had him. "That," she said, her voice cold, "is the real key. You didn't think I could get to it, but I did. All of your dirty secrets, all of the evidence that ties you to the larger conspiracy, it's all on this drive." Victor's face darkened, his jaw tightening. "You don't understand, MIA. You think you've won, but this isn't a game. This is bigger than you. You think the truth will save you, but it won't." Mia's mind was clear now, her resolve stronger than ever. She wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't afraid of Victor. She wasn't afraid of the threats, the lies, or the people who had been manipulating her from the shadows. She had the truth now. She had the one thing that could bring everything crashing down. With one final move, MIA tossed the USB drive into the air, and without hesitation, she crushed it beneath her heel, destroying the evidence. Victor's eyes widened in disbelief, and for a moment, MIA thought she saw genuine panic flicker across his face. He couldn't believe it. But what Victor didn't know, what he would never know, was that MIA had backed up the drive before she came here. She had anticipated this moment, the moment when she would have to choose between exposing the truth or burning it all down. You lost, MIA said quietly, her eyes locked with his. You thought you could control me, but you were wrong. This game is over. The final twist, Victor had underestimated the one thing that would be his undoing, Mia's ability to outsmart him. As she turned away and walked out of the room, leaving Victor standing there in stunned silence, MIA knew the battle wasn't over. There would be more to fight, more to uncover. But for now, she had won. The truth had been exposed, and it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. The days following Victor's defeat were a blur for MIA. She had expected some sense of closure, a feeling of relief, but the truth she had uncovered only left her with more questions. The conspiracy had unraveled, but it wasn't the neat, satisfying conclusion she had hoped for. The people behind it all, the ones who had used her, manipulated her, were still out there, still operating in the shadows, and though Victor was no longer in control, MIA knew the war was far from over. The evidence she had destroyed might have been a vital piece in bringing them down, but she had a backup plan, a network of allies who were helping her piece everything together, one fragment at a time. Slowly, but surely, the pieces of the larger puzzle were falling into place, but it wasn't easy. Every step forward came with the weight of the past crashing down on her. In the weeks that followed, MIA focused on what mattered most, getting her life back. She returned to a place of normalcy, reconnecting with old friends, trying to find some semblance of peace after everything she had endured. But even as she smiled in the presence of those who loved her, there was a constant reminder of what she had learned. The shadows were still there, lingering just outside her vision, and she couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that someone, somewhere, was always watching. She'd never be the same again. The woman who had once been naive, who had believed in simple truths and right versus wrong, had become someone else, someone who understood the complexities of power, corruption, and manipulation. Yet, despite the darkness that still clung to her, MIA had a newfound sense of strength. She had faced the unknown, discovered hidden truths, and confronted her worst fears, and she had survived. The guilt and anger that once consumed her had faded, replaced by a hard-won wisdom. She knew she wasn't alone. There were others like her, people who had been manipulated, people who had fought and lost, people who had risen from the ashes of their own personal hells. And in this, MIA found solidarity, a quiet sense of peace. The truth had come at a cost. It had cost her peace, her innocence, and her sense of safety. But in the end, it had also given her something more important, a purpose. She wasn't just a bystander in a game anymore. She wasn't the helpless victim. She had become a force to be reckoned with, and though the battle was far from over, she knew that she had the strength to keep fighting. It wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't even just about bringing those responsible to justice. It was about making sure that no one else would have to go through what she had. It was about taking back the power that had been stolen from her, from everyone who had been swept up in this dark undercurrent of deceit and corruption. The conspiracy she had uncovered was just the tip of the iceberg. There were more players, more pieces on the board, and MIA was determined to uncover every single one. But as she stood on the balcony of her apartment that evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she couldn't help but wonder how much of this was truly over. How much of it had really been her choice, and how much of it had been guided by invisible hands that still held the strings. It was a question she couldn't shake, a question that lingered in her mind every day. Was she truly in control of her destiny now, or was she still just a pawn in someone else's game? A sudden thought struck her, one that felt like a whisper from the past. The photograph of Ethan, she hadn't thought about it in days. But as the image flashed in her mind, she realized with a jolt that there was something about it she had overlooked. Something important. She pulled her phone from her pocket and opened the file, scrolling through the pictures she'd saved. There it was, the image of Ethan, the one from the old warehouse. He had been holding something in his hand. A small device, barely noticeable at first glance. Mia's heart skipped a beat. She had never paid it any attention before, too focused on the other clues. But now, staring at it, the device seemed to pulse with significance. She zoomed in, her mind racing. What was it? Was it a tracker? A key? A signal? She wasn't sure, but the unease that crept up her spine was undeniable. The last pieces of this puzzle were still out of her reach, but they were closer now than ever before. She stared out at the city below, her thoughts a swirling mess. She had made it this far, uncovered so much, but the final pieces were still hidden, still waiting to be revealed. As the night fell and the first stars began to appear in the sky, Mia knew she couldn't stop now. Not until the entire truth was exposed, not until every last person responsible was held accountable. The shadows still lurked around her, but she would face them head-on, as she always had. And then, just as she was about to turn away, her phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was a simple text, just a name and a number, Rachel. 703-555-1234, call me. Mia froze. Rachel? After everything that had happened, after the betrayal, why would she reach out now? What more could she possibly want from her? 1,000 questions ran through her mind, but there was only one thing that felt certain in that moment. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The phone buzzed again, another message. It's bigger than you think, Mia. They're watching you. They're still watching. You've been a part of this from the beginning, and you need to know the rest. The weight of the words hit her like a ton of bricks. She had never truly escaped. The truth, the game, it was still in motion. But one thing was clear, Mia was no longer just following the trail. She was leading it. And as much as she wanted to walk away, to finally put this all behind her, she knew she couldn't. Not until she understood what this all meant, what her role truly was in the world of power, lies, and conspiracies that had shaped her life. As she stared at the phone in her hand, the weight of the decision settled over her like a cloak of inevitability. She was in too deep now. She had uncovered enough to know that the truth she sought would never fully be revealed. Not unless she kept going, not unless she kept pushing, kept fighting, even if it meant sacrificing everything she had left. The final twist had come, but the story was far from over. The game was still on. And Mia, the woman who had once been a pawn, was now its most dangerous player. With a deep breath, she dialed the number. The truth would come out, no matter the cost. She had taken back control. And she wasn't going to stop until the entire conspiracy was dismantled.